All right. Hi, I'm Sean Mosen. Welcome to the Agatsu Physical Culture Podcast. My special guest today is Tony Blauer. Tony Blauer is the president, the founder of Blauer Tactical Systems. And many of you might recognize him as the CrossFit self-defense guy. So welcome to the show, Tony. Thanks very much for sitting down and joining me.
No problem. How you doing, Sean?
I'm great, except for one thing. I don't want to complain. But the last time I saw you, we were sitting by a pool in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
And enjoying a fairly decent cup of coffee.
I think we should point out that I was already at the hotel and you came to meet with me, that we didn't have a room together. We weren't like spending the weekend together.
You can point that out, but I think a little mystery in a podcast is nicer, and you probably get more shares, right? Because people say, yeah, it was interesting. You had this guy on. I don't know what the relationship there is.
What was going on? They were talking about a spear or something.
They were sitting by the cabana. It was really weird. But yeah, it's minus 22 today in Montreal. So that's why I have this beard.
It's a little cool today in Southern California. I think it's 68 now, and it might go up to a brisk 73. I was just outside training. I actually was training, and I had to wear these like sweatpants. They're not really sweatpants.
Oh, it's because it's freezing. That's horrible.
Yeah, it's freezing out.
Look. If you look really close, you'll see it. You'll see it roll down my cheek, but you have to look very close. So, look, I was thinking, I messaged you the other day, and I was thinking about it. I saw a podcast with you, and it was great. It was a CrossFit podcast. It was really cool. And something occurred to me that I found kind of funny. And it's happened actually a couple times. I think last time I was in LA, I was talking to somebody, and I said, I just saw you, and they said, yeah, the CrossFit guy. And I laughed, not in the no dummy, he's not the CrossFit guy way, but I just thought it was kind of funny that, yeah, there's a whole bunch of people that know you as like the CrossFit self-defense guy. And I sometimes see, posts both negative and positive about that on Facebook. And I just think it's funny because they don't really realize you've been at this for quite a while, and long before there was CrossFit. And
correct.
In fact, not only have you been at this for so long, but really you are, I can easily say it, you're the foremost pioneer when it comes to realistic self-defense training. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and there's a lot of great guys out there, but anyone who's involved in that world, if they don't tip their hat to you in some way and say, yeah, this is a very influential guy, this guy really influenced the way martial artists approach self-defense, they either were living under a rock, or that's just completely disingenuous because, growing up as a kid in Montreal, where you're from as well, and doing martial arts as I did, I heard your name constantly, and I started to see and watch and follow what you were doing. And of course I was following as much as I could martial artists around the world and what people were doing, so I really understand that time, and there was no one doing what you were doing then in any way, shape, or form. Now we see, a lot of similar type things, people that were influenced, but it is undeniable the influence you had. And I think funny that a lot of people now just see you on a podcast or a CrossFit thing, and they're like, oh, that's nice, they got this guy to give some self-defense classes. Cool.
It's very funny, and I don't even think about it like that. So it's cute to me that you point that out, and it makes me reminisce, because I make the joke to sometimes if I get drawn into some critical thread and there's these disparaging comments, sometimes I'll leave it like, hey, I've been coaching longer than you've been alive on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Go Google me.
Yeah, we're talking about at least 30 years of this.
Yeah, 36 years I've been coaching.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, I wrestled, I competed in wrestling, I boxed, I did taekwondo, and that was like before 1975, all those things were happening.
Yeah.
In 1973, I knew I wanted to be a professional self-defense instructor. My mother asked me when I was 13, good Jewish kid. Hey, you going to be a lawyer or a doctor? You're going to go into your father's business. And I was stretching on the ground looking at some Bruce Lee magazine. And I said, Mom, it's actually, I'm going to be a martial artist like Bruce Lee and teach self-defense. And she patted me on the head and said, okay, son, we'll talk about this when you're older. And she was just visiting a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I'm so proud of you. I still don't know what you do, but I'm so proud of you, So it's kind of funny. But but yeah, it's if I were to talk about CrossFit for a second, um, I got introduced to CrossFit in 2006 through some fun military connections. Both Coach Glassman and myself, back in the day, shared some of the same contacts without knowing each other. In other words, he was functional fitness, I was functional fighting, and people were experimenting and exploring that. And I had a couple of military guys on the West Coast say to me, "Hey, you remind me of Greg Glassman from CrossFit." And I was like, "CrossFit? What's that?" This is like 2005.
Yeah.
CrossFit, what's that? I said, and I actually joked. I said, "What kind of name is that? CrossFit? That'll never catch on." Shows you how much I know about business, right? So, and then I said, like, why does he remind you? What do you mean? He says, well, just the way you talk about, our language when we designed programs and we talked to military, law enforcement, self-defense proponents. We'd say, listen, you can't have a favorite move. And that's what a lot of styles have as their signature move. And I'd say your best move might trigger his best counter, and the counter fighter is a more dangerous opponent. I said, you need to have what I referred to back then as circumstantial spontaneity. You need to be able to be in any situation, any circumstance, and spontaneously adapt to it and pull out some primal gross motor skill sets out of your theoretical proverbial toolbox. And I said, so you can't specialize. You can't have a favorite move. Now you can have an artistic bias, but you probably don't know this, and a lot of people don't know this. But when I had my school on Paris Street, when I had my school on St. Catherine Street, we had some guys there that were very skilled in grappling. George St. Pierre's first grappling coach was one of my students, who I didn't know. He was so humble that he was on Canada's Greco-Roman wrestling team and had been studying jiu-jitsu and going down to train with Henzo. And he never said a word to me. He came into class, Angelo came into the class.
Yeah, I know Angelo. I remember him from when I used to teach at TriStar. Yeah.
Okay, so this is years before TriStar has my ring. Conrad bought my ring from me when I closed up shop. So the ring that all you guys were in. So anyways, the cool thing, I'm having flashbacks now. I'm gonna start to cry. I need a little hug, but so Angelo was training with me like for a year, just learning like my approach to self-defense. And then one day, a good friend of mine came up to do a ground fighting class, Walt Lyzak, and Angelo's down there and he's tearing everybody up. And I'm in the ring doing a drill with him, and he's like, oh, look at him doing this. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like, how are you so good at this right away? And he goes, oh, I did this a little bit before. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, it's kind of like I was kind of on the Greco team for Canada, and I've been studying jiu-jitsu and been going to New York and studying with Henzo. I go, you never said anything to me? You're freaking amazing at this shit. He said, I came here to study your stuff. So selfless. Anyways, I immediately said, well, guess what? You're teaching a grappling program, right? So the point of all this is that my focus has always been your personal safety, always. And so in my schools, when we offered, so I had like some competitive kickboxer guys. So I had Dan teaching, kickboxing and sparring, and I had Angelo doing, grappling. But to get to those classes, I used to tell people you had to train 2 to 3 months in our fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And think about how backwards this is in the conventional, for 30, 40 years. When we started training back in the 80s, there was this every school had this secret Friday night class for the advanced belts where they did crazy shit.
Yeah, that was the inner circle you wanted to get into.
But think about it. The inner circle is where you learned like real street lethal, right?
Yeah.
And, when I finally got of age to decide that maybe my thoughts on safety and survival might matter to some people, and took that enormous leap of faith of going out and teaching. I said, that's backwards. We should teach people to defend themselves first, and then they can get involved in artistic expression.
Yeah.
And now here, this is back in the 80s. And it's ironic. So, recently I did a conference, a big police conference, which I've been doing these things for 20 years now. So I'm a guest instructor at the International Law Enforcement Trainers Conference. I got 400 trainers there. And I say to them, I say, hey, how many of you are trainers? They all put up their hands. I said, okay, guess what? Listen to this statement and tell me what you think about it. And I said, there is no evidence that what we teach people for self-defense actually works. It doesn't manifest itself on CCTV, on dashboard video, on helmet cam, on iPhone. You do not see on a regular basis, a frequent basis, or any basis, different moves from different martial arts over and over again happening. Okay. And it's, blows people's mind. Now I was talking to a police audience where they've got, a different level of training and a different professionalism. But my point being is I recognize something, and I couldn't articulate it back then the way I do now. But, I got asked in the early 90s, what's the best art for the street? And I said, art is for a museum.
Yeah.
Right? What your stylistic bias is should resonate with your personality. You like to grapple, you like to kick, you like to, and so, ectomorph, mesomorph, good hips, long legs, long arms. And, there should be some emotional, psychological, cathartic value to your training. It shouldn't all be Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's almost like, it's like if you said to me, Tony, I want to get a gun for home defense. And I said, oh, you need a Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle. It's 35 pounds and it's accurate up to a mile. And if you just trusted me as a subject matter expert, if you could get your hands on one, that would be the stupidest gun to have for home defense, right? But it sounds cool.
Yeah.
In other words, what we use for the street needs to be really thought out carefully. And then we need to ask ourselves, if we're looking for that information from the style that we've chosen, how factual versus, fantasy is that?
Well, that was one of the really amazing things that you pioneered in the 80s was this, you came out with that series of videos from they were
Panther.
produced by Panther, yeah, and it was called Panic Attack. And I remember seeing like a VHS copy of that. For those of you who don't know what VHS is, stop immediately listening to the podcast and get away from me. Yeah. So we started, I watched it, and it was amazing because I remember back then you had pieced together, you didn't have the cool high gear suits, that you developed later on. You were piecing together pieces of, protection that would be adequate. Like you had the Kushiki helmets, it's like a boxing helmet with the plexiglass face mask that would, rip your hands up, different type of protectors. And a lot of people, were piecing together, things so they could kick the crap out of each other. So that's okay. A lot of guys would go, yeah, we were doing that and fighting in backyards. But what they weren't doing, and what you did in those tapes, which I think a lot of people, it flew over their heads, the impact of it, was you were actually running scenarios. And you didn't pretty the tapes up, which was another thing that I thought was really cool. I mean, this didn't look like a kung fu movie. Sometimes it looked real cool. Sometimes it looked, frankly, like crap. It just looked like a mess, but it looked like a fight. I mean, you had guys, talking, stopping somebody, shoving someone. All of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, someone got rocked. And you could see the guy really got rocked and was trying to figure out what to do. And you set different parameters. And you were giving people experience and familiarity in something that the only way to get experience and familiarity with before this kind of training was to go and actually look for trouble. So it actually...
I want to interject something here, because I used to talk about that when I did seminars, and we did several and still continue to this day. I'm taking off for Australia next week. I mean, we're doing stuff all over the world, and one of the things that I always tell people from a behavioral basis is that if you and your Cobra Kai buddies decided to go get, some real training experience in the street, your unconscious survival radar will always pick somebody you believe you can beat.
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle thing. No one's going to walk down the street. So Sean, you and I go, hey, let's go get some real world experience. We'll go to this rough part of town. And I go, Sean, you jump that guy.
Yeah.
If you looked at him and thought he was going to kill you
Yeah.
tonight, maim you, rip your balls off, blind you, you go, let's pick somebody else. I didn't have enough to drink yet,
Yeah.
or that guy looks like the all predators pick people, even in the true pet predators behavioral psychodynamics, will pick people they believe they're going to be able to dominate.
Sure.
That's the whole point of the power trip and the manipulation. And this is the thing that I always. I didn't do this on purpose. It was just it was a curse and a blessing that I always saw the training like that, which is why in the panic attacks we had, if you looked at the fight like a piece of pizza, like that pie graph,
Sure.
we would slice it up into what I saw as different elements: psychological, behavioral, emotional, fear, distraction. Okay, let's work this drill to work our peripheral vision. In this exercise here, you're going to work your verbal de-escalation. Here we had one where the objective of the defender was, even though it wasn't multiple assailant from his perspective, he was surrounded by the gang and he wasn't allowed to fight. He was only, you had to stay there and okay, now you're going to do this exercise where you're going to get bitch slapped, you're going to get pushed, you're going to get smacked, you're going to get, catcalled. And the concept was just stress inoculate for that.
Yeah.
And what we did is we sliced everything we could with the best of intention, said, how do I create a synthetic experience in each slide? So if this is the whole fight, what are all the variables that happen? Remember an expression that we coined that, everything's possible, but not everything's probable.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can go, well, what about this? I go, well, if Jackie Chan and Jet Li had a kid, he might be able to do that. And if you were that good, you might be able to do that. But let's practice what's probably going to happen. And when we take care of what's probable, we can start to explore what's possible.
Right.
And, it's crazy. I just got an email last year from a guy that I trained with me in Montreal, well over a decade ago, who did like a seminar, and then he was walking down the street and some, homeless dude with a makeshift knife jumped out, asked him for money, and he kind of ignored him, and the guy jumped at him with this knife, and, he freaked out. He emailed me going, man, suddenly it all came back, the whole startled flinch, and I hit him with the spear and I was able to, I could have been killed that night, and I just wanted to thank you. And I get stuff like that where I didn't really know the people. They didn't train with me and get their 17th degree black belt in spear.
Yeah.
It was this is fear, this is awareness. This is how awareness and fear work together. This is what happens when you get a fear spike. Here's how your body moves. Your reptilian brain will override your cognitive brain. So whatever complex motor skill you thought you were going to do, if it's a truth surprise, it's going to get bypassed by physiology. This is just science. You don't need to buy my T-shirt. You don't have to wear a Karate Kid, headband and walk around. This is just what's going to happen.
Yeah. The
spear is a bridge to your next move. And so the truth of the matter is that when I get those emails from people who I don't even remember that, do you remember me? We trained together that weekend back. I don't remember. But what I've been doing for 2 decades now, because while I've been coaching for 3 decades, the spear methodology of understanding physiology and psychology and putting together a truly behaviorally based system really only kind of crystallized in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't surprise me when I hear that, and I consider myself I'm not a salesman. I'm a talesman. I'm telling people, hey, here's what I'm not trying to sell anyone something. I'm going, you are already a human weapon. Your body can do this. And what prevents other people from being able to protect themselves immediately is fear and domestication, that you think the cavalry is going to rush in.
Yeah.
Or if I stand up for myself, this guy's just going to punch me in the face and it's not going to work. And what it is, it's a whole bunch of erroneous fears that weigh us down.
And I think that's a great message. And I think when people see maybe a snapshot. They see a sampling in a video clip or something that you're doing or something that someone puts up, and then all the the internet warriors and everyone gets out and people start writing. I mean, I've seen this my whole life in martial arts, like you as well. Like, this won't work, that won't work, and some of that is great, like you said, because you have to experiment, you have to really test things. But what people sometimes don't understand is when they see a drill taken out of context or in isolation, what they got to try to understand is, what is the person who set that scenario up, those drills up, what are they trying to get across? What are they trying to introduce? Like the one you mentioned is great, where you have a bunch of guys yelling, maybe smacking a guy around, and they're like, "That's somebody can see that and go, that's stupid. The guy would fight back, or I would just hit one guy and I'd run out, or it." But that's not the point of the drill. You're trying to give people tools that they can use and try to get them psychologically prepared for something that's spontaneous and that you really, in a way, can't fully prepare for. And the only way to do that is to, like you said, you got to slice up the pie, you've got to dissect it, and you got to give people some experience and that feeling that's going to come as close as you can replicate it. And that's why, along with what you're doing with CrossFit now, what a lot of people don't know is that most trust, you're trusted by law enforcement agencies around the world, all the ones that people love to say those names and put in TV shows, and, oh, this guy's such a badass, he's part of this agency. Those are the guys that you're asked to go teach, not because, you've got some super secret move, but because you can help them get their head right for their task. And that's really the most important thing.
Well, the CrossFit thing has definitely created a lot of hype and exposure because CrossFit's media arm is so fantastic. They are, love or hate CrossFit, and I obviously love it. They have changed fitness on the planet Earth. They have exposed people and motivated people. And so what they've done is they've increased the longevity and all the psychological adaptations that come as a result of being more fit. 11,000 CrossFit boxes, millions of people all over the world doing it, who would have been maybe sitting on their couch flipping the TV remote. Yeah. So CrossFit's media has obviously done a tremendous amount of work, and then that goes around. Well, a lot of the haters online who who suddenly when they saw CrossFit Defense, they forgot that they were online, and they forgot how to use Google, and they didn't do a little search to go, hey, who is behind CrossFit Defense? They didn't look at the efficacy, or as you were talking about, what's the scenario? What is the objective of the course? Yeah. One of the things, I ended up getting involved in a couple of nasty online threads, and it was typically like the inexperienced or insecure MMA, jiu-jitsu, reality-based groups that didn't look to go, hey, oh, wait a minute, it's and it's not that I'm a big deal. It's Tony Blauer. He's been coaching for 35 years, cerebral self-defense, high gear, spear system, military law enforcement trainers all over the world. Now that we know it's like a legit guy, let's see what they're saying. There was none of that. It was the CrossFit haters going, oh, now CrossFit's trying to actually get into self-defense. That's our wheelhouse. You guys, stay in your lane. Yeah. But the thing here is simply this. A lot of people, because of movies, UFC, and boxing, unconsciously associate that athletic movement as self-defense. There's a difference between a street attack and a street fight. A street fight, I define as a sport fight in the street. A street attack is when you're a good Samaritan hanging out with your girlfriend, your wife, your sister, your brother, your family, and suddenly you're going, what the fuck's going on? And a credible threat can't be avoided. And now there's danger, and you're scared, and you need to move. And so years ago, I told people, hey, the degree of clarity with which you define something will determine its usefulness to you. You need to look at things in terms of a recipe. If I say, hey, try my apple pie, and I just give you a slice of apple, you're going to go slice of apple. It's not the pie. Oh, this is just one part of the recipe. What do you think? You'll know it's an apple. It's not a pie yet, right? If I just give you in other words,
Hmm.
you look at the wrong part of the drill without an explanation or orientation. You have no clue what you're looking at. So people look at Mike Tyson clip and they go, "Man, I wouldn't want to fight him." And you're right, you wouldn't want to fight him. But to assume that that's what a street fight looks like, or a street attack looks like, or what somebody will do in a home invasion or a carjacking or a rape or whatever, they're completely different. And the first assault in the street is to your emotional system. And so there's lots of guys and gals who've been trained really well, trained, who have no clue what to do in the street. And their whole emotional system shuts them down.
Hmm.
So your physical prowess, we like to tell people, if you have awareness without skill, you're going to have anxiety and you're going to get your ass kicked. If you've got skill but no awareness, you won't have anxiety, but you're still going to get your ass kicked,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a component there, but it all will filter back to, if we were going to create one of those kind of like org charts of what's important. At the end of the day, everything comes back to fear. Fear throttles or fuels whatever you're going to do next. And that's always been the basis. And I want to throw out there, just to let people know that the CrossFit Defense program is a 1 and 2 day course designed for people who aren't into martial arts.
Hmm.
We discourage martial artists from coming to it. Um, it doesn't replace martial arts. If you write us a letter and you go, "No, I really want to go, I'm high level this, or I just began this," that's great. It's the equivalent of this, and I wrote this article online, and if you do a Google search, it's kind of cool. If you search CrossFit Defense versus MMA and BJJ, Tony Blauer,
Right.
you'll see it's on Facebook Note. It's also in the message board on CrossFit. And I drew this two parallels that I want to share with your listeners. And one is, I can teach you how to use a shotgun in 5 or 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And then I can tell you the best place to stand to protect the room or protect your family with this shotgun. And then we can go to the range and I can shoot it, for 5, 10 minutes. I can show you again, stress inoculate. This is the kick. This is the recoil. Here's how you reload. And then I could run a scenario with some paintballs and stuff and
Hmm.
airsoft or whatever. And we could spend like a day, and we'd be repeating ourselves if we spent a day. And I would say, "Sean, now you know where to keep your weapon, what to say when you hear somebody jiggling at the door who's
Yeah.
not supposed to come in your house, where to stand, and how to move, and how to shoot with a shotgun, because it's not like front sight at 25 yards on a pistol, right?" And I could look you in the eyes and go, "Sean, will you protect your family? God forbid something happens." And you'll look at me and you go, "I'm afraid, but I will." And you remember the fear management block we did this morning. We spent an hour on the psychology of fear, the neurocircuitry of fear. You'll go, "Yes, I do." And you know why you're going to fight, because we went over the 3 Ps: personal, passionate, present. Why you're not going to give up in this fight. And you made your list, right? Yes. And you know how to use the technology? Yes. Okay, the rest is up to fate. Some days you're the bug and some days you're the windshield. Good luck. Hope it never happens. But you can spend a day and you're good to go. Does that make you a SWAT team operator? Can you fast rope from a helicopter and go on a mission with a military? Of course not.
Yeah.
And so when we would say, "Look, it's a day course on how to do this, God forbid.
Yeah.
I can show you how to use a fire extinguisher in 5 minutes. I can do a scenario with a real fire extinguisher in your backyard. Hey, look, let's pretend that this picture of a fire is a real fire. Turn around, grab the pin, pull, spray. Okay, now we're going to do another scenario. I'm going to scream, 'Help, help, the kitchen's on fire.' I want you to run here, grab this $10 Costco fire extinguisher, pull the pin, run in here, and we'll spray it and then we'll hose it down." We're doing scenarios. Are you safer as a result of that? 100%,
Yeah.
right? Are you a fucking fireman?
No.
No, right? And so I would see these people online. "I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. I'm an MMA fighter. You can't learn how to." What they were saying in this moment of overreaction and assumption
Yeah.
was, "You couldn't beat me in the octagon."
Yeah.
Well, no kidding, duh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
That's great,
anyways,
Captain Obvious. Yes.
so it just blew my mind how people were like so verbally violent. And there was also another irony there to, the elements of honor, integrity, and humility that the martial arts community is supposed to breed, having these like martial arts instructors screaming, "You're shit! You're a charlatan!" I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
I see your training hasn't been that cathartic, sir. So,
Yeah, maybe the training didn't take. They didn't get, I think, all the other
crazy.
stuff out of it. They didn't get the Zen part.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyways, I mean, in fact, this year is our 50th consecutive personal defense readiness coaches course. This is another thing, people not doing their homework on us is when CrossFit and I got together and I said, hey, I love the community. I'd love to set something up. And this is back in 2006, Coach
Hmm.
Glassman and I talked about it. And he said, hey, I get this whole spear thing. It's functional movement. And what CrossFit was doing was Coach Glassman's language way back in the day was you know, um, movements that are elemental and fundamental to your survival to be prepared for the unknown and the unknowable. That was far more succinct and elegant than me saying, hey, circumstantial spontaneity will dictate what you do. You can't have a favorite move. Your favorite move will trigger his best counter.
Hmm.
That, we said the exact same thing, but mine sounds like a fucking riddle, it's like that was my Zen Buddhist
The
research.
cone, yeah.
Let's make this a cone so nobody understands. So
Yeah.
anyways, so there was this like symbiotic philosophy as we moved forward. It just took their op tempo, the company growing in the CrossFit Games, and we ended up moving to the States and setting up that big training center, and the U.S. Army bought a gazillion of our high gear suits and went into their combatives program. So we finally, it took like 6, 7 years. So a lot of people are like thinking CrossFit did this for the money or Blauer did this for the money. No,
Right.
we've been talking about this for 6 years. And we were already subject matter experts in the substance matters philosophy on how to protect yourself. Because I've been running a 2-day PDR, personal defense readiness coaches course
Right.
for almost 20 years now or something. I don't even know
Yeah.
how many years it's been,
Exactly. Yeah. So,
So
yeah, it's amazing, and it's amazing. I think, like, one of the most interesting things about what you do is the emphasis on fear. And in the martial arts community, it's largely overlooked. And I think in most communities, even in terms of people just working out and physical training, and people thinking about just sort of myopically about trying to get a tiny ass or a six pack and like big arms. These things are all cool, they're all great, but from training you get so much. If you approach it a certain way, and one of the greatest things that you can get from it is that confidence and a certain attitude, a certain way of approaching your life. And you see fear affecting people in so many different ways in every aspect of their life, that someone who would take, like you said, a weekend course on self-defense is not going to become a martial arts expert, but they may learn something or get an idea about something that's going to help them if they really need it, And another thing that they may get that might really spark for them is just their relationship with fear and how maybe it rules their life. I was just teaching in Toronto over the weekend with Sarah Claire, and it was a joint mobility and movement certification. And one of the things we do is we open up and we have everyone do cartwheels. You ever watch a bunch of adults do cartwheels? Yeah. And of the group of people, we had like almost 30 people there. They do their cartwheels. Most of them, it looks like, sacks of potatoes being kicked off the back of a truck. And the ones that can do a half decent one, when we say switch legs, everyone gets horrified. They get a look in their eyes, like literally like we're about to knife fight, right? And then I asked them all, why, those of you who can't do a cartwheel at all, why can't you? And then they say, well, I don't practice cartwheels. And I said, all right. Those of you who can do it, why can't you do it on the other side? They all say the same thing. That's my bad side. And I tell them, no, that's bullshit. It's not a bad side. What does that side do? Does it sneak out at night when you're sleeping and it commits felonies? That's the side that's addicted to cocaine and, it goes wild and steals a car. He said, you can't do it because you're afraid to look like an uncoordinated idiot. You managed to do it half decent on one side. That's what you learned, and that's what you'll show in front of people. But you don't want to spend the time and look silly because you're afraid. So you never do the other side. And those of you who've never learned how to do it is because at one point you probably tried and looked silly and got nervous. And because you were afraid, you never learned how to do it. And that's why most people, when they go to the gym, they only practice things they're already good at. And that's why most people that I meet aren't good at much, because of fear. And it's a simple, small thing, but it's one of the, the things that stops everyone from living a life they want to live. I mean, a lot of people know my influences from my teachers that I talk about and people that I've trained with and who I learn the stuff that I do from. But what most people don't know is that your work had a huge influence on me, even though I never studied martial arts. I never studied self-defense with you. In fact, I was really lucky when we met. I got to teach you some kettlebell, which was like super fun for me. But following what you did and how you started to build your company and your career inspired me in a big way to face my fears and to realize that it was possible to do what I wanted to do, because you were a guy from my hometown. You were going to do something completely and utterly unreasonable, as you mentioned at the beginning of this, when your mom said, hey, what do you want to do? My parents still can't figure out what I want to do, but my dad looks at me when I'm over and he says, I can't believe you make money. It's amazing. And he goes, where are you going now? And I'm like, I'm going to New Zealand to teach. He goes, that's completely crazy. It's amazing that fear can rule people's lives, and it can alter them in such a way if they can face it, I remember I was having a shitty day trying to get this all going, and I had seen your stuff, and I was thinking about, this guy did it. If one guy can do it, other people can do it. It is possible. And I remember you sent me an email, and at that point we had never spoken before. You just sent me an email. It was one sentence. That's all it was. And it said, hey, just was on your site, checked out your stuff, looks really good, keep up the good work. And that was it. And it was a funny thing, and it's a funny thing to me because when I read it, I already knew who you were. I was like, that's a really nice thing to say, with no other reason, no ulterior motive, just you're doing a good job, keep it up. And it made me think, yeah, damn right, I'm going to keep it up. And it was a really important thing because it helped me kind of face it and go, fuck it, I can do it, And every time I would think about that, and I would get into those kind of, things that everybody has to face when they have their own company, I would think, listen, this guy did it. This guy's, now down in California. People around the world know him. It's possible to do if you really want to make it happen. You just have to face those fears and take those risks. And, you've probably taught, now thousands and thousands of people self-defense. There's no question. But you've taught that many people and more about, dealing with fear and relating to their fears. And that's an amazing thing, I think you got inducted to the Martial Arts Hall of Fame a long, long time ago, and you got up and you made a speech, right? And you asked people, you held up, you remember what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to say what you did, or you want me to just say what you did? You held up a news clipping about an incident, right? A horrible crime that had taken place.
Kid getting murdered.
Yeah, a kid got murdered, and you asked everybody there, as a room full of martial artists, you asked them, like, what could you have done that could have helped, help this kid? What could you teach that could have helped this kid? And that's an interesting thing to have said, especially to that room. It's an honest thing. And it's probably a very honest thing because you read it, and that's probably such a horrible thing to read that you ask yourself that. What could I do? Is what I'm doing helping people? And so I think that's important, and it's important when you think about what it is that you do, and people, when they look at you and what you're doing, you're teaching people how to deal with that fear, and you're teaching people to look at it, and that's the important thing. And at the end of the day, there's all kinds of people can argue about techniques, all kinds of people can argue about the best way to get from point A to point B, but if you're not going to look at the fear and how to relate to it, how to overcome it, how to live with it, how to rise up, and face it, and feel the fear, but say, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyways, then, people aren't going to be able to deal with it. And that's really what I think you've done. You've shown that, there are ways to approach it, there are ways to do it, and you've dedicated your teaching and your work to helping people, which is an amazing thing because, someone can like it, they can not like it. They can like CrossFit, they can not like CrossFit. But you did set out to find something that would help people, and 30 years later, you're helping those that want to be helped by it. And that's the important thing. That's an amazing legacy. So,
Wow.
you know, I think it's an
Thank you.
incredible thing, man.
Thank you, Sean. That's it's cool. I don't, it's funny. I get caught up in the okay, I got these 8 seminars to plan for. I got to book trainers here. I got a whole training team. We got our military and law enforcement team. We got our CrossFit defense team that I'm grooming and mentoring and interning.
Yeah.
I've got the PDR stuff. I got the wife. I've got the kids. I've got all this stuff going on, and I I really appreciated that what you just said there, because I don't know the last time, if ever, that I've thought about what exactly it is that I do, and
You're too busy doing it.
I'm done.
That's for other people to think
I'm
about.
doing it, and I will say, at I was just always consumed by that. I was consumed by the fear and consumed by the, am I doing the best job possible? I would leave seminars, people would be going, oh, can I shake your hand? Can I take a picture with you? Thank you. Could you, and I would go home. It would take me hours to come down from the seminar because it was like I put on this, you know what I'm talking about, this
Yeah.
show. But I was always pissed off. I rarely went, wow, that was great. I couldn't have gone. It was like, man, I can't believe that. I didn't explain that right, and I could have done this, and I could have done that, and that's pure passion and recognizing. I used to have some guys that are no longer with me that would always get frustrated on like the Sunday night if they were out going to teach somewhere. I'd get on a Skype with the whole team that was abroad, and I go, guys, I want you to try this drill like this. And when we do this on Wednesday, I want this drill to happen first and do that. And you'd see the guys like in the picture going, because it was Sunday night,
Yeah.
right? And a bunch of times, and I'm glad those guys are gone now. But a bunch of times I had to say, this course isn't for you, motherfucker.
Yeah.
This course is for the students. We are going to continue to improve and evolve our delivery system. This program is about personal safety, enhancing survivability. So we're not going to teach stuff from 20 years ago, from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The latest iteration should be the one you're going to.
Yeah.
Is this the best expression we can? And so it's kind of cool. It was neat to hear that, and it resonates with the feedback that I get, where people will say, hey, I really learned this and it was great and the spear was great, but I learned so much more. And I concur with what you said. I touched briefly on it a little bit earlier, but fear throttles or fuels what you do. And if we all learned how to kind of like introspect, because it can happen without there doesn't need to be a startle flinch,
Right.
For you to feel fear. It could be, wow, that's weird. I got this bad feeling in my hip, or I think I got a toothache, or should I ask that person for a date, or how do I answer this email? Anything can trigger this fear spike, and then how you approach that is going to change your strategy and your tactic, and it's huge. Fear is everything.
Yeah, it is. It's a big thing in everyone's life. So for people that want to find you, they check this out, they want to know more about you, I've got a lot of my students are CrossFitters. They have CrossFit boxes. So I know you're going all over the place with the CrossFit program. They can go right to the CrossFit HQ website and they can find the listings for where you're going to be with that. They can go to TonyBlauer.com, or also TonyBlauer.com. Is there also a Blauer Tactical? Or?
Yeah, if either one, I don't know what they call it in internet speak, but if you type in one, it redirects to
the other one. Okay, so they'll go to TonyBlauer.com and they can see where you have the PDR. They can check out the high gear that we were talking about, this amazing suit that you've developed over the years. I wore it once on TV while I was getting beat up by a plus-size model. That was a semi-weird day and a long string of weird days that I've had. But it is the coolest thing, and for actually sparring and being able to move, and more importantly, still being able to feel something. You don't walk around like, you're bulletproof and, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You get feedback. It's awesome. And if you want to wrestle with like a plus-size model on TV on VH1 Celebrity Fit Club, it's perfect for that. You know, so they can check that out there on your website, and they can catch you giving seminars all over the world.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting ready to take off to Europe, but all of our courses, so I got actually Australia next week and then Europe for a CrossFit Defense Tour. PDR coming up in Virginia, just outside of DC. So we finally got all our videos digitized, which allows you to play it on smartphones and
That's
stuff like
awesome.
that. Because geography and finances does restrict people from getting to train with me or you for that matter.
Yep.
So most of our courses are train the trainer, and in all communities. But like you said, if you go to the TonyBlauer.com website, everything's listed there, and that's a good place to start.
That's awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for sitting down and taking time out from this beautiful sunny day that I see peeking through the windows in the background.
Hey, it was my pleasure,
Why
and
don't you come back to Montreal and be miserable a little bit and freeze? You know?
no,
No?
no,
Not
no,
interested? No, we have smoked meat and
not.
bagels. Tempting?
That might tempt me, but I'll wait for the season to change.
All right, man. Thanks very
Okay,
much.
man. Thanks, buddy.
Awesome. Pleasure.
Take care.